Yeah, you can be honest. I know you got it at Safeway. Didn't you?
Walmart.
Oh, Walmart. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good place to get it. I don't even know if we sell little bags of these. I don't think we do. Just big candy bars.
Yeah, foot longs.
Yeah, 5-pounders. No kidding. I bet my husband was really embarrassed. He came home. He was like, I saw that and I said, oh, I'm excited to see you tomorrow. And I said, we got the dates wrong. He was like, she probably thinks I don't know what in the world I'm in.
I have something for you. It's Texas Woman's Baseball shirt that I'm donating, and I'd rather donate it to your children than.
Yeah, we'll take it.
I figured you could. Yes, sir. Okay.
I guess.
Thank you. Oh, yeah. So I don't need to wait. You know. Okay. Is Jim
Is he
Wees
the
not
only
coming?
other one we're missing?
We haven't heard from him.
We'll just start and he can slide in, I hope. This must be fire department. I think there's a pattern here.
There could be.
Up, time to go.
Yeah, see ya.
Yeah.
Are you gonna recognize our new clerk?
He gets a reduction.
I doubt he wants to do that. Good afternoon, and welcome to the city workshop on the 23rd of January. And we will go around the table and introduce ourselves. I am Beth Munns, Mayor Pro Tem.
Joel Servadius, City Council.
Rick Allenberg, City Council.
Wayne O'Born, City Administrator.
Ray Merrill, Fire Chief.
Erica Wassinger, City Council.
Do the department heads want to, or wait till your turn, introduce yourselves? Okay, they're shaking their heads. All right, we have a nice audience today, so appreciate that. All right, first on the agenda is Human Resources, new employees. Take it away, Emma, please.
Good afternoon, Council. Good afternoon. Emma House, Human Resources Director, and I'm going to invite my new employees to come and stand with me, please, so I can introduce them to you. I have Sarah Heller here. She is our new Administrative Assistant for Development Services, and she began employment with us just recently at the end of November. She's also our newest member on our Wellness Committee, which you have got succulents from today. Over here. And then next I have somebody with me that you probably already met. This is Jim Bridges. He is our new city engineer. Jim began employment with us in December, so very recently. And then we have Elise with us. Elise Henry is our newest at the marina. And she actually began seasonal employment with us in April and then converted to full-time employment in October. So welcome them all to the city.
Thank you. May we see you at the 10-year where you get your fleece from the city, okay? All right, next on the agenda is Fire Department.
Oh,
Take it
goodness.
away, Chief Merrill.
Oh, wait for the program to come up. And before I get started, I've got to make some thanks, because I started my program here a while back in the end of December, and with Sandra's help, Kathy's help, Angie's help, and Patricia's help, we went through this program 3 or 4 times, and Kathy said, change this, and Sandra said, you ought to change this, and Patricia said, you should do this, and as a good person, I listened to what the women had to say, and I followed exactly their recommendations. So thank you to all of you for your help. They really spent a lot of time on it with me, so I appreciate that. So we're going to talk about our ladder truck. As you probably looked at in the packet, you probably saw some interesting information about our truck. So we had, back in December, December 15th, I believe, Diversified was out to do its annual inspection on the ladder truck, and they found some failures on our truck. 3 of the major ones is there's cracks in the second section fly assembly, there's some cracks in the third section tip assembly, There's some cracks in the main lift cylinders, and there's some control problems that we have with the pedestal. The pedestal we've known about for a while, and that wasn't something to keep the truck out of service. But I want to give you a little background on the ladder truck. You may remember it was purchased back in 1992. We took delivery of it late in 1992, and this price tag is going to shock you. We spent $353,000 for that thing back in 1992. I don't want to tell you yet how much a new ladder truck costs. The thing only has 16,680 miles on it. It's got 3,200 hours of use on it. And you know, if you take a look at that truck, you came in the station today, you'd swear it looks almost brand new. You know, just looking at the picture of it, it looks really good. It's a good truck. So to give you an idea about the truck itself, it's a 6-person fully enclosed cab. It's what's called a 100-foot heavy-duty ladder with a 1,000-gallon-minute waterway nozzle on it. It doesn't have its own water pump, and it doesn't have a water tank. And some uses for that truck, of course, for structure fires. We utilize for elevated master streams. We carry a multitude of ground ladders on the truck. We definitely use it for access and egress for heights. We've used it for technical rescues. You've seen some pictures over the years of its use for technical rescue. We definitely use it on public education and displays, and we utilize it for ventilation and overhaul at fires. It has been used up and down the island a few times. But taking a look at the vehicle itself, the body and the chassis are in really good condition. There's no rust inside the cabinetry. The running gear is in really good condition on that truck with only 16,000 miles. The cab and the interior are in good condition. So what the problem is the ladder portion of the truck is out of service. The remainder of the truck is still fully operational. And right now we depend on the Navy 75-foot Quint because that's the only ladder on the island. So that is a concern for us. We recently were requested to take our ladder truck down when our South Whidbey had a 7,000 square foot house on fire. We were unable to provide any services to them, so the Navy went down. And again, Navies were on mutual aid with them, but we can't always depend on them 100% of the time because they could be on other obligations. So one of the questions that come up, do we have to have a ladder truck? And NFPA standard 1710, which I'll talk about here in a minute, says yes. Washington Survey and Rating Bureau, as you know, says yes. And the Insurance Services Organization says yes. So under NFPA 1710, and this is the best practice. It's a nationally recognized standard. It's not a code. It's not an absolute, but it's a nationally recognized standard. And this standard is for the organization deployment of services for career fire departments. And it does require 2 engine companies and a ladder truck on all first alarm assignments. We know that by NFPA 1710, we should have 14 people at a fire scene before we start our initial attack. Washington Survey and Rating Bureau says if we have 5 or more buildings with a fire flow of more than 4,000 gallons of water per minute, we're going to have a ladder, or we have 5 or more buildings 35 feet in height, we're supposed to have a ladder truck. And you start going around the city, Regency, Summerhill, Best Western, Coachman, Candlewood, Waterside condos, and multiple apartments all fall under this 35-foot level. We could conceivably, if we don't have a ladder truck, lose our Class 4 rating because that is part of the requirements for our Class 4. Insurance Service Organization, ISO, says if we have 5 or more buildings with a fire flow of 3,500 gallons a minute or more, or 5 or more buildings 32 feet in height to the underside of the eaves. So the same buildings that are required under Survey and Rating Bureau are required under ISO ratings. So over the years, in the last 27 years, we've been pretty fortunate. We've had to replace the H-frame outriggers because they were cracked at the tube enclosures. We've rebuilt the collector ring and the waterway assembly at the turntable. We've replaced the seals in the waterway. We've rebuilt the rotation gear motor. We've replaced the torsional walking beams in the rear end of the apparatus. And we've replaced the power takeoff and hydraulic motor that makes all the hydraulics on the truck work. And we've also had to remove and repair the radiator. So a question that might come up is how much money have we spent on that thing over the last 27 years? Roughly $103,000. So roughly about $4,000 a year to maintain that vehicle. Now, per NFPA 1911, which deals with repair and maintenance and testing of apparatus, we're required to do a 5-year and an annual non-destructive test. So when the vehicle was certified by Midwestern Testing when it was constructed, it was tested by American Test Centers. They became diversified inspections. We've used them every year since 1992, and it has passed and certified every year up until 2018. So every year that vehicle has passed its certification tests. So the portion that's out of service is what's highlighted in yellow, which is the stick up on the top. Everything on the bottom of that chassis is still fully operational. So the biggest concern we have is the cracks in the second stage base fly section. And to give you an idea where that's located, if you take a look at the truck itself, the widest section at the bottom is the first section, that's the biggest section. The next section up is the second section fly assembly, the third section fly assembly, and then the fourth fly assembly. One of our major concerns is the cracks in the I-beam on the second stage fly section, which would be right there, and I've got some really close-ups of this so you can get a better idea what it looks like. Now, I thought this was a really nice picture. Someone spent a lot of time drawing this one. Just to give you an idea how the beam and the fly section come together, that hash mark is that crack assembly. So this is the cracking that's occurring in the base of the fly section. One on the driver's side, one on the passenger side. That stuff did not exist in 2017. That wasn't there when a rep from Seagraves came out and took a look at it. This has occurred since sometime in 2017 to 2018. We don't know when it actually occurred, but it was found during the non-destructive test. The tip of the third section fly assembly, you can see the two cracks there. When I talked with Seagraves, they took a look at these pictures. They said, oh, that's easily repairable. That's not a problem. We can re-weld that. That's an easy fix. We've got some cracks on the main lift cylinder gusset plates that actually raise and lower the bed assembly, right in that section. And you can see the crack marks where it says BW, which is a bad weld. And that gives you a close-up of what the weld looks like between the gusset and the base of the ladder. Seagraves took a look at that and they said, oh yeah, we've seen that before. Pretty easy fix. We've come some other category 1 failures, and I hope you took a look at the inspection report that came with the presentation, and you saw what Diversified had to say about the truck. When they did the elevation drift test, you stand the ladder truck up at 75 degrees, you put a marking on it, and after an hour you see how much drift it has, how much it drops. It failed. The drift level was too quickly to come down. Not by a lot, but enough to fail the drift assembly. Rick?
Question. Is that a cylinder problem?
It could be one of two things. It could be a cylinder where the seal inside, this is a double acting cylinder. Mm-hmm. So it could be that the seal inside of the cylinder where the piston moves back and forth could be bleeding past it. Mm-hmm. The other possibility is there's what's called counterbalance valves. And a counterbalance valve is designed to hold pressure on the lift cylinder, so that when there's no hydraulic fluid flowing through it, the counterbalance valve closes and in essence locks the oil in position. If that counterbalance valve is weeping, it could be allowing the oil to come around and allow the drift to occur. We have found that one of the boxes where a counterbalance valve is located, we've seen some oil dripping on it over the last couple months, so we've got a new one in stock, but we just have not installed it. It is a potential, it could be that. We don't know for sure. So those are the two options we could look at. The monitor motor, the up and down function is missing. We knew that because we've got one on order because the other one had failed. That motor has since come in. We need to replace it on the monitor. Because of the cracks that were located, Diversified says we're not going to conduct a load test and we're not going to conduct a waterway test. The way the crack is, if you've ever seen videos of ladder trucks fail, they fail instantaneously. All of a sudden it just snaps and it breaks. So we opted not to do the load test. So what we have to talk about today is, do we repair it, or do we replace it, or do we do a combination thereof? The repairing it buys us some time for some purchasing decisions. We know that truck's 27 years old. I've talked before that it's got a limited lifetime. We know that. We've been very fortunate with that vehicle. So one of the options we're really considering is take that ladder truck to Seagraves in Clintonville, Wisconsin. We know the transportation cost is around $10,000 to get it there, give or take a little bit. When I went out and started costing this out, the first carrier said it was about $9,900. Over about 2 month or 2 week period of time, as they bid on the job, the bid came down to about $7,900. So, you know, these different carriers bid against each other. So we're looking at getting that back to Wisconsin. Seagraves will do an inspection for about $5,000. When they do that, it's an in-depth inspection at the Seagraves shop because that's where they have the tools and the equipment to properly inspect that vehicle. They're going to take a look at all the known failures and they're going to search for any hidden issues. Is there something else wrong with it? They're going to determine the potential for repair and what is the best direction to go. When I talked with Seagraves, they said that cost is about $5,000. If you just came in, we looked at it and we said this is what's wrong with it, and we said, well, we're not going to do anything else, they're going to charge us about $5,000. Plus the transport expenses. And whether we lowboy it back east and drive it back out, those are some variables. You know, my choice right now is not to drive that vehicle across the Cascade Mountains or across the Continental Divide and over the Blues and over the Rockies. This is probably not a good time to take that truck that direction. You know, come April coming back, it might not be quite so bad. At that inspection, they may tell us it's not repairable. It's too far gone. Not likely, because the conversations I've had with Seagraves in the last 3 or 4 weeks, we've been sending pictures back and forth and having some really good conversations. We can look at doing a refurbish. This is one of Seagraves' recommendation, was to do a refurbish. He says this vehicle is a prime candidate for it because of the condition of the body, the chassis, the framework, the low mileage. It all falls into a good potential for a refurbish. Starts at about $150,000 and goes up. And I'll tell you here shortly what the refurbish gets us. So they're going to fully remove the ladder from the truck, fully disassemble the ladder, media blast the entire thing, place it back on the original design jig, and confirm that all the fly sections are within specifications. They're going to inspect it for defects. A third-party company is going to come in, do an inspection, and MagnaFlux the entire ladder's assemblies to make sure there's nothing hidden inside that metal that is starting to fail, and do the full MagnaFlux all the way through. They're going to repair what they can. We know that third stage is easily repairable. They're going to prime it, they're going to paint it, they're going to undercoat that ladder. This is the issue, is the second stage is the biggest concern. We could look at, if it's repairable, that's great. If it's not, it could be anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000. So why the big range? If they've got a used fly assembly that they can certify and put in, he says it's about $20,000. If they have to build a brand new second section fly, it's about $50,000. When I talked with the Seagraves guys, they said they're pretty sure they've got a used second section fly that could go in there. So that's why the big range. And then repairing the hydraulic problems, such as the cylinders or the counterbalance valves. They're going to rebuild the extend and the retract cylinders, replace all the rollers, all the sheaves, all the cabling, all the cat track, and all the rung covers. So to give you an idea, of course, that's the cabling. You can see in the sheaves where the imprinting from the wire rope is into the metal of the sheave itself. All that stuff gets replaced. New wire rope gets placed back on the apparatus. The cat track, all the electrical system gets replaced. All the rung covers get replaced. The cylinders get rebuilt as far as the extend and retract cylinders. A couple of other issues that we know about, of course, is the cracked welds on the lift cylinders, which Seagraves says is easily repairable. They've seen that before. The failed drift test, it's going to be one of the two. It's either going to be the cylinders itself or it's going to be the counterbalance valves. And we do have some problems with the pedestal control valves. I'll talk about those here in just a little bit. But of course, there's the weld problem there. On the pedestal, we've got an obsolete control system. When the guy from Seagraves is out, he says, my gosh, I haven't seen one of these for years. And as you notice,
At least for 27.
at least for 27 years, yeah. If you read in the report, rotation clockwise was fine. Rotation counterclockwise was about 30 seconds longer than rotation clockwise. The repair for Seagraves was, and it's in the center handle, we undercut the back of the center handle so the valve could move further, was Seagraves' repair. It's an old mechanical valve, and if you're familiar with hydraulics, it's got what's called a spool valve, and it uses a spool valve assembly and like a little piece of wire that moves the spool back and forth. He said they no longer build that. It's fully obsolete. They could replace the hydraulics in just the pedestal for about 10 grand and put a new valve body assembly in there. He said if it fails, you guys are out of luck. We just don't build it. To put an entire new pedestal on, the entire metal enclosure and all the controls and everything else is about $50,000. When Seagraves looked at the picture, he said, we should just put a new control valve assembly in. And this is just a picture of what, it's all mechanical. The new ones are an electronic controlled spool valve instead of a mechanically controlled spool valve. Once they get done, it's tested and certified, the waterway's tested and certified, and we bring the truck home again. The other option is a retrofit. If you notice, the price tag on the retrofit is just a little bit higher by about $500,000, and we don't know what the upper end is. And during the retrofit, they fully remove and replace the ladder. They get rid of the entire ladder assembly. They remove and replace the torque box and the outriggers, put all new equipment in. They redo the hydraulic system, replace the pedestal, and it starts at about $500,000 and goes up. When I talked to the guys at Seagraves, they said there's no reason to, unless it's so deteriorated in the truck itself to do this. He said it's an option, but it's a very expensive option. And again, it's going to be tested and certified, the waterways tested and certified, and again, either we go back to Wisconsin and drive it back or have Seagraves return it back to us. So if those two aren't options, we have to look at replacement. Good for 20 years plus. Do we purchase a demo model? There are a few demos available. I was talking with Pierce today. They have 3 available today if we wanted to buy them. We could look at anywhere from 2 months to a year without a ladder truck. Of course, the issue is funding in this case. When you start talking $900,000 to $1 million, how do we fund it? If we went to the voters for a bond, we could look at it considerably longer than a year, depending on when that goes on the ballot and if it's even approved. So that's purchasing a demo model. The other one is purchasing a new one from $900,000 to $1.5 million. And the variance in these costs is, do you buy a quint? Do you buy a straight stick? Do you buy a medium duty ladder? Do you buy a heavy duty ladder? If you buy an 80-foot quint, it's a lot less money, and I say a lot less, it's in the $900,000 range versus buying a heavy duty 100-foot stick or a 100-foot quint. And again, we could be up to 2 years without a ladder truck if we went to purchase a brand new one. Because by the time we go to the voters, get a bond approved, write the specs, bid out the job, order the truck, and it takes 8 months to a year to build a brand new one, it could be 2 years before we could see one again. And that's a really long time to go without a truck. So our paths to the solution. Do we repair the existing, refurbish or retrofit, starting at about $150,000? From what we know today, we're probably looking at, depending on that second fly section, if we had to replace it, we're looking at $200,000-ish, maybe a little more. We do the pedestal work, it's another $10,000. We do some hydraulic work. We're going to be bumping up close to $250,000 right in that neighborhood. Rick, do you have a question?
Oh, no.
You're writing stuff down.
I'm writing notes.
Okay, good. And what this does is that buys us some time to make some purchasing decisions. And the time frame is we're looking at 2 to 5 months for the repairs from the time we start this project. And we could be increasing the lifespan of that truck 5 to potentially 10 years. Again, it's a piece of equipment, it's still subject to failure, but we will be buying some time in it. The other one is to purchase a demo or used ladder starting around $100,000 or $900,000, and we can either look at 100-foot trucks, 75 or 80-foot quints. Again, our time frame could be 2 months, and I do know that there's a 107-foot ladder truck that's available, and there's 2 75-foot quints that are available in 2 months from now. So you might be wondering what a quint looks like. There's a quint. And it's a combination of a ladder truck and an engine. It carries hose, water, has an aerial ladder, carries ground ladders. That's $900,000. Some of the pros, has its own water supply, it's got its own pump, it could serve as a backup engine company. It is a little bit lower cost. Some of the concerns, of course, is it's a shorter aerial. It's only 75 to 80 feet long versus 100 foot. When we start considering setbacks from buildings and means of egress into buildings, a 75-foot may not get us to the building that we need, whereas a 100-foot would. The other possibility is to purchase a new truck, anywhere from $900,000 to 1.5. A 100-foot heavy-duty truck, we could conceivably look at a Quint, and again, our time frame is 1 to 2 years from the time we started. Something else we need to consider is 2 of our fire engines are 1998s. They're going to be due for replacement in 2022. Now, NFPA 1911, it used to say that an engine company was good for 20 years. At the end of 20 years, it had to be retired. The new NFPA standard now says the only time you have to retire that vehicle is when it's deemed unsafe, which is a change over what 1911 said in the last code cycle. So in this new one, it says it's only because it's unsafe. Our 2 98 Seagraves are fully enclosed cabs. They are actually a very good piece of equipment, and we could conceivably see a lot more years out of them. So some of our options and some time comparisons. Refurbish the truck, we're looking at 2 months, maybe a little bit more. We could be looking at 5 to 7 years that we're buying out of that truck, $150,000 to $250,000. A retrofit could take up to 5 months of out of service time. We could be increasing our lifespan 7 to 10 years, $500,000 and up. Purchasing a demo or a used ladder, a Quint truck if they're available. We could look at, conceivably looking at an emergency purchase at 2 months. You're buying 20 years for about $900,000. You could purchase a new 75 or 80 foot Quint, spec, bid, build. We're looking at probably 2 years to get it if we went brand new. Purchasing a new 100-foot ladder truck, again 2 years, 1.2 to 1.5 million. I've seen some used trucks that are available for sale. I looked at a couple of some 2015s for about $900,000. They've already got 55,000 miles on them, and I looked at some of the pictures, and they've been beat, and they're only 4 years old. So that's something to consider. So the question is funding? Is it available? The reality is, with or without a ladder truck right now, we have a potential solution. There is some funding money available for the refurbishment, is available in the general fund from that excess stability funds that were transferred during the budget cycle. That's going to buy us some time for replacement and to begin the process of how to purchase a replacement ladder within the next 6 years, so we have a plan how we're going to get there. So where do we go from here?
Councilman Walsinger.
I have a question on the option to refurbish, rebuild, repair, to send it back to Wisconsin for just the ladder section. Would that work be warranted by
Yes.
them, and for how long? If that ladder were to crack again or have other issues that they inspected it, they sent it back to us and said it's good, how many years?
1 year warranty on materials and workmanship.
Okay. That's all for now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilman Servadius.
Thank you. Just, I mean, I'm doing some basic math. 16,000 miles over 27 years is 592 miles a year. If we took out parades, Holland happening 4th of July, I'm looking at how often do we use that truck? And the specific question is, why is it cracked? You said there was nothing on a 2017 inspection. What happened in 2018? Specific incidents that it was used, or how many times that ladder extended that would have cracked or fatigued? Well, the metal's always fatiguing, it's metal.
Right.
Do you know what incident might have cracked that ladder?
We can't put it to any one incident. When I talked to the guys at Seagraves, they said it could be just a failure of the metal after all these years. Just the normal use of that truck going up and down, being extended, bowing, the arch in the stick. That second section fly takes the heaviest load when the ladder's extended. Because if you look at that, when the ladder goes out, it curves. And the most amount of stress is on those back 2 corners on the second section fly assembly. And when I talked with Seagraves, he said unless we do a full metallurgy test of it, we can't tell you exactly why it failed, but it looks like it's just flat metal fatigue from 27 years of use.
And how many times do you think a year, however you want to quantify it, do we use that for an actual public safety event? Not a parade or military appreciation or 4th of July. Maybe we need to cut some of those events down to get more use out of our year.
Yeah, public safety wise, the parade, military appreciation.
How many times do we use it to save a life, put out a fire, get someone off a roof?
Well, I could say in 18 we've been very fortunate because we haven't had any fires that we had to go to use the stick. We've used it probably 8 to 10 times in a technical rescue. We've used it to pick a person up off of a roof downtown when he fell through the roof and broke his leg. We've used it when the golf course was on fire, when the clubhouse was on fire, and we used it for an elevated water stream. We've used it on some residential structure fires, on chimney fires. We probably use it 4 or 5 times a year on some type of structure fire or structure event. We've been very fortunate. We've never had to actually rescue somebody using the stick portion other than the guy that fell through the roof.
Okay. So I guess where I'm leaning, and then you put up there a lifespan, if we went with the retrofit where they sandblast it, Magnaflux, go through all that process, which I would probably lean in that direction, a lifespan of 5 to 7 years. I would hope if we went to that degree of restoration and maybe we minimize some of these other, every time you extend that ladder to hang the American flag, nothing against, we love the American flag, but it's going up and down a lot, then maybe it doesn't need to go up and down that much, and we preserve it to try and get the most use if the cab and the chassis and everything is in that good a shape. So, and that's just probably where I'm leaning, unless there was evidence that retrofit wouldn't be successful.
Can you go back 2 slides with your options? Yeah, that one right there. The problem is, and that's why it's here, is we didn't budget this. We've just been going off of time. The engines in the ladder trucks for the fire department, there was a decision in the past, from my understanding, to not put them into the budget cycle. And the idea was that if we ever had any need to replace them, then we do a levy lift with a required referendum and then bond them that way. So that's certainly an option. That's a longer process. I don't think we have any choice. I think we need the ladder. It's just what do we go for? I'm going to go on the smaller side and say let's try to get by with the Quint. So my recommendation would be to do the option, to do the 2-month option on the top for the 150 to 250. I budget 250. We don't have it budgeted, so we would have to go into reserves, unfortunately. And then long term, look at the 900,000 option with the Quint, with the change. I would recommend we replace one of the engines with the Quint. And then probably might want to just, when we're doing the bond, we might want to just do an engine. So we would do a bond for an engine and a Quint at the same time. It would reduce the amount of engines, but I think you can get by. We can kind of show that we're being conscientious of cost. I think if I was to do everything and had unlimited money, I'd go for the $1.5 million and the larger ladder truck, which I think would be something nice to have. But that's my recommendation moving forward.
Councilman Omberg.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Chief Merrill, good presentation, a lot of information. We're talking about 3 pieces of equipment, replacing 2 Quints and the ladder truck.
No.
Or not 2 Quints, excuse me, replacing
engines.
2 engines. And you've also talked in the past about forming another,
Fire station.
Truck company. What are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Having a ladder and a Quint both.
Yes,
At the new
yes.
station, yes.
So what would really be helpful for me to understand what our real need is to have a list of priorities. Are the quints more important or replacing the trucks? We got a whole bunch of things coming up here. So for me, I need a list of priorities and go down that list. And then the timeline that goes out on that list, and you touched on some of it here, but it's a little bit loose. And then how are we going to fund it? What are the funding options? And that's what this workshop is pretty good for, is it starts giving us some information to start working on. I need a timeline and a priority list.
Yeah.
So are the new trucks more important than this, or is this the most important of all of our needs?
Right now, the ladder is the most important, fixing the ladder,
Okay?
doing the retrofit
Okay.
on it. Go ahead, Len.
Well, what we were looking at too is the 6-year, and what I want to do going forward, and I talked to the finance director, and I think we all kind of have it, is put it into the budget. Even if we talked about bonds, put it on the list on the capital, so you know at least in 6 years, and it does your priority looking at it. So if we were to do it today, you probably would have had all 3 of these in here for the next 6 years, right?
Yes.
So that's what I told him, let's look forward. He can do it all the way out, but we only do on our capital. Replacement, we go out, but on our capital, we only do the 6 years. So that would give you a 6-year look at what's coming out. And so if we were to do that, he would be looking at, you would probably, even if we wouldn't have run into this repair, he probably would have figured in the next 2 to 5 years, let's replace the ladder truck and 2 engines.
Okay, then, and so my next question I had written down here, where's the money? We don't have the money right now. We have some of the money
We have enough money,
to
when I talked with Patricia.
to refurbish
do
the
refurbish.
ladder.
Yes, there's
Okay.
money there to refurbish the
Not
truck.
replace the ladder package, but refurbish what we have.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, let me clarify too, just so you fully understand. When it goes back to Seagraves, they're gonna look that whole truck over.
And there may be some hidden surprises.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
That's the risk that we take.
We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know that. But we have to probably consider that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's probably about $20,000 to get that reviewed, but I think it's well worth the money to go ahead and get that reviewed.
So it'd be the 20 plus the 150 on the best side if you were just gonna refurbish.
Yeah, but at a minimum, we have to ship it there for 10 grand.
Right, right.
We have to do the inspection for another 20 grand.
No,
So-
$5 for the inspection.
5 grand, okay, so 15,000
Now,
to look at. So there's a possibility we may spend, we thinking we're gonna go for the refurbish, we get it there, and it doesn't qualify. All their initial reviews look like there's a good chance it'll be okay.
yeah,
but
so let me clarify something on that 5,000. If we send it back and they look that whole truck over and they say, this is a prime candidate to do a refurbish on, we don't get charged that 5,000. That's part of the refurbish cost.
Okay.
If we send it back and they say it's gonna be 5,000, or it's $5,000, and we think you should buy a new truck because this is all worn out and we're not gonna do anything, and we say, fine, we're stopping right here, then they're gonna charge us that 5 grand. But if we send it back to them and they do the inspection, that's part of the cost of the refurbish.
Okay. Right now, the priority, let's understand this, priority of all the trucks is the ladder truck.
Fixing that
right
truck.
now. Okay. And so, the city administrator's recommendation, or it's leaning toward that, is the refurbish for the 150 to 250,
250.
and we have that money in place.
Correct.
Okay. So that buys us time to go through the next priorities on that list.
Yes.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah.
So if we send it back and they go, hey, this thing is just shot. Now, the inspection's already said the truck is good, but the ladder package is not refurbishable, or they could probably build a whole new one, which would be out of cost for us, I would imagine. It would be like putting maybe a new transmission in a beat-up old vehicle.
Yeah.
My question is, do you have any idea what the value, what would they give us for that truck if we really couldn't replace it?
Right now, today,
If we couldn't replace the ladder, refurbish the ladder or use the ladders? I mean, we have a truck that's good, but we don't have the package for the ladder system.
So your question is,
How much is that truck worth the way it is?
Zero.
Really?
yep.
Because of the ladder.
I'll give you $5,000 for it.
Well, see, there you go.
No, we did a direct trade-in
Whether
on
the
one that was
grocery
at
store had one, huh?
a jurisdiction, but it had a functioning ladder.
Right.
It was 20 years old, it
Yeah.
was about 50,000, so there
Okay.
wasn't a lot there.
But you, what's the name of that manufacturer again?
Seagraves.
Seagraves. Yeah. So if it gets back there and they say this isn't going to really work, and we just say we're going to say keep the truck.
We'd probably go get it, bring it back and part it out. It's worth more in parts than it is in resale value,
Seriously.
which is sad, yeah. Yeah. When I had it inspected 2 years ago with Seagraves, and we sent him pictures and everything else, he said, well, it's 1992, yeah, it's low mileage. It's got a value of about $30,000 because it's so old.
Okay. So is there another fire truck manufacturing company on the West Coast? Why do we have to go to Seagrave?
Because it's their ladder, their truck, their assembly.
Well, maybe we don't want that system anymore. Maybe we want to look at another one.
Another ladder wouldn't fit on the
No,
Seagraves.
another company
Oh,
for
yeah,
the whole
Oh, yeah,
truck.
yeah. I mean, you could go HME, you could go Hughes, you could go Stutfin, you can go Pierce. There's other companies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe if we went with other companies and we're looking at perhaps buying 2 vehicles, that takes us out of the refurbish decision and puts us into the new purchase, which leads me to my next question. You said it takes us 5 to 7 months to get a new one because they build it to our specifications. Don't they already have trucks in the production line where they're building trucks? They build them one at a time for each community? I see
Yes and no.
Kathy Rosen nodding her head back there, yes, so.
Yeah. I'm going to say yes or no, and I'll tell you why I'm going to say yes or no. All the manufacturers will build 1 or 2 demo units that they send around on the circuit to show off their new products.
Okay.
And then they sell them. That's why I know that there's 3 of them right now available, the 2 Quints and the ladder truck. They're just coming off the line. Well, one came off in 17, has been a demo unit. There's 2 that are coming off the line that are going to be going on the circuit this year that become available after July or August. They're their demo units. That's the one they put all the extra bells and whistles on and fancy the truck up more. If we were to spec a vehicle out, it has to be open competitive bidding. So Pierce, Seagraves, Stutfin, HME, any of them could bid on it.
Okay,
Then if you're building a truck, it's 8 months to a year from the day you award that bid until that truck is available, because it's custom built to your specification. If you want to buy the demo unit, you buy it as is with whatever's on it, just the way the vehicle sits.
okay, good answers. And for the information that's provided to us, at least to me today, I'm more inclined to follow the lead of the city administrator to try to buy some time and some, not just time for us for funding, but time, it's short term to get to having the ladder, but also we may get more than 5 to 7 years out of it.
We could.
too.
You know, we know the chassis from everything we know about it today. And I gotta preface that, everything we know about it today.
Right.
The chassis, the running gear are all in excellent condition. They've only got 16,000 miles on them.
Yeah.
I did oil sample testing on the engine itself. It came back fine. There's nothing wrong with the engine. Transmission appears to be good. The running gear appears to be good. We don't know, is there a crack in that frame? We don't know, but potentially no. So we know it's a good, solid piece of equipment. We know the body and the cab is in perfect condition. When you look at it, there's absolutely no rusting in the compartments. They're all clean. The exterior of the vehicle is good. Glass is good. All that stuff is in good condition. So that's a big plus.
Just time is not on our side.
Time is
anymore.
not in our favor. And I guess it's kind of frustrating on my part, because for the last 27 years, we've tried to put money aside to buy this, and it's always been, we're going to go out and bond it when it comes time to get a new one. We're just going to bond for a new one. Well, the day has come, we're behind the 8 ball, the truck is broke, and we don't have the money to buy a new one.
So we fix that truck on the refurbishing and then try to go for the bond? Is that what you're thinking?
In a long term, yes.
Okay, all right.
And plan towards that design so that we get people on board with, this is what we're going to do, this is why we need to do it, and we're gonna have to sell it. I mean, that's a fact. And what are we going to do with that bond money, and what are we gonna purchase, and what's our time frame going to be?
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you, Chief.
Welcome.
Councilman Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Chief Merrill, I want to hit briefly upon one other option that you hit briefly on, and I want to make sure I understand this. The reality is our worst case scenario is that we go back there and they determine that the existing ladder assembly cannot be refurbished. And then there is another option, and that would be the retrofit. Would that not be correct?
That's correct.
So the worst case scenario, we would get back there, that assembly could not be fixed. We could retrofit, which would get us roughly about 10 years, about roughly a little less than half the life of a new unit for about half the cost of a new unit. So it sounds that that would be a worst case scenario possibly?
That would be a bad case scenario.
Yeah.
Let's say that. Because once you open that door, now all of a sudden we put $500,000 in that truck, and what happens in 2 years from now if the frame snaps? We don't know. The refurbish is, to me, probably the most realistic option today to do, provided that the ladders meet specifications when they put it back on the design jig. And Seagrave says we can do a lot of stuff to make these things right, because they do it all the time. So we know it's already been out of service since December 15th, getting it back to Seagraves, and then they'd have it for about 2 months to do the refurbish. To do a retro, they're saying it takes 5 months to retrofit it.
Well, I certainly would think the refurbish is going to make the most sense. I would also agree with Councilor Omberg that, seeing how this picture is going to look, once we're through this step, 6 years moving forward, how this is going to line up with the opening of another fire hall or the assembly of another truck company, and how we may be able to utilize and shift this equipment around best, because obviously we know that used equipment does not have much value, and obviously, the fact that you guys have maintained this vehicle well, the chassis enables us to do this, and I'd like to see how that kind of all jives together before we start making the decisions for purchasing of the additional 2 trucks in 2022. So I'm sure that you're going to see that we're not going to be relying upon bond money the day we need the new equipment moving forward.
And that was our plan a few years ago, was to do that, and then it was we're just going to hold off until we really need to do it, and then we'll bond for it and buy it. Well, that's shaky ground, because you don't know what the public's going to do.
Great. Well, thank you. Certainly a great presentation. Thank you.
Chief, I have a question. The transportation company that's taking it, we're not dead of winter, it just depends on what days you go, but our vehicle is insured when they take it,
Yes.
so we don't have to worry about that. It's their nickel getting it there safely and returning it.
Yeah, and I've talked with Seagraves guys quite a bit, and they say they use 2 companies predominantly that they've had very good success with. And I would recommend that whichever company they recommend, because they've transported their trucks before, would be the company to go with. They're fully insured, they're fully bonded, so if something happened to our truck en route, it's insured.
Okay, and then a question for our finance director. Looking forward, needing to replace expensive vehicles, if we're going for a bond, then probably in 4 years is when we want to start it, because by the time you do the advertising, this is why we need it, and then you go to the voters and stuff, it would take about 2 years for that cycle before we would have the money to be able to do it. So if we need it in, depending on what the inspection is and what all of that, we probably have about 4 years time, maybe 3-ish. I'm thinking of you running the process and what we need to do.
What we were thinking was, first of all, getting it onto the 6-year plan, because currently none of the trucks are on that. And then getting this refurbished done gives us time, as the chief has stated, so that we can do that process. Because when we head into next budget season would be the time when we're identifying funding, or even before, maybe when the CIP is being done in 2019. We identify what funding we're looking for and how we go about it.
And then we could also figure in the cost of putting it on the ballot, because I know it's not free. So we need to figure all of that in.
And there's local loans and there's other loans that may or may not be available that might be a better choice. The reason the levy lid lift would give us the revenue to pay for it. So do we do the levy lid lift and instead of bonding? I don't know. Those kind of things we'd have to figure out. But that's the plan of getting it on the list and having time to plan, not buy new now if we don't have to, because as the chief alluded to, we had that $1.5 million that we moved out of the stability fund into cash and general fund. So if council chooses to move forward with the refurbish, we would be coming back with a contract for whoever the vendor is, and then also a budget amendment to add that cash into the budget for this process, if council approved that.
Okay, and thank you. And one more question, Chief. So the Navy is well aware the state of our ladder truck.
Yes.
And I would imagine we've also put word out to Anacortes. I mean, heaven forbid, but I know we do some things with them. If we need to have something, a vehicle like that, and the Navy is occupied elsewhere.
Yes, and sort of.
Okay,
Anacortes knows, because I've talked with Jack. However, we don't have a mutual aid agreement with Anacortes. So if we ask for the ladder truck to come over to us, they're going to charge us for that use, only because we don't have a formalized mutual aid agreement.
okay. So maybe that ought to be in the formula then, is what is it gonna cost?
Yep.
Just so it's not a big surprise when we get a bill or we need to call upon it, that our finance director is well aware of what that additional
We know what the cost
or-
would be
okay.
because it goes by the state chief's billing.
Okay.
And so we know what the hourly rate for a ladder truck is. We know the hourly rate for each of the positions. And that's all that would be required.
It'd be nice as a council member just to be aware of it in
Yeah.
case it suddenly comes up as, what am I implying? I
Yeah.
don't, it's not nice to have surprises. So if we know we have a problem and we've got a lot of contingencies, it would be nice to at least have some idea of the cost. We may not always remember that exactly, but we can't say that we hadn't heard it.
Right.
So I just think if everybody's on the same page and we have the same numbers and something referred to, I think helps everyone in the end. Would be appreciated.
I will get that for you.
Thank you,
I
sir.
can do that.
All right. Councilman Zervadius.
One last follow-up on that. So you say that the, I mean, do you have a dollar amount? I'm not gonna hold you to the penny, but per hourly, $100 an hour, $200 an hour? Plus crew, I mean,
I don't want to quote you the wrong number. I can't just rattle off my,
Okay.
this is one thing I just can't rattle off.
Sure.
There's a lot of stuff up here, but that's not one of them.
and so that's I'm just a numbers guy. I'd be curious, let's say we had, I think you said 4 to 5 incidents a year where we use this ladder truck. Does it make sense to probably still fix ours so we have one, but really rely on some of those interlocal agreements or however we'd structure it to be able to utilize another crew and then minimize, like I say, the load that we put on that one for the time being with all the different parades and
Yeah.
community events. It looks great sitting out there with it, you know, the ladder all the way extended with the flag hanging off it, but maybe that's undue load that we don't need to expose.
Something though that you have to consider with other departments, that's on an as available basis. So if their trucks are being used and we call for it,
Right.
it's not there. The same way with the Navy.
Right.
And with our mutual aid with the Navy, of course, we go there to assist them, they come and assist us. So.
Sure.
Is it short, Mr. Umberg?
Yes, it is.
All right, go ahead.
I need a
please.
clarification on the $10,000. Wait a minute, is it short? I mean, I
Well,
have a
I'm trying to keep us on a time schedule, so we're not just gonna beat the horse to death. Thank you, sir.
I'm not beating this horse. I'm going to keep this thing going here.
Yeah, I know.
Clarification on the $10,000 for the transport. That's 5 going east and 5 going west?
It's 10 going east.
Oh, so then we have another 10 for the round trip.
Unless we go get it, and then it's just whatever.
Okay.
Our
all right.
cost is.
Do I hear volunteer?
I didn't understand that in the presentation, now I do. The other thing is on the bond, if we're gonna bond for the ladder truck, would it make sense to also include in that bonding package the priority list of whether it's a quint or an engine, so that you're doing multiple package of equipment rather than onesie twosies?
Yes. I don't want to go to the public, and now this is a bias of mine, and
Sure.
bear with me. I don't want to go to the public this year and say, I need a ladder truck, and here's what it's going to cost in the bond, and then 2 years from now, come back and say, oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you, I need 2 new fire engines too. I'd much rather go out and say, we need a truck, we need 2 engines, this is why we need them, this is how old they are, this is the lifespan, and this is what it's going to cost.
So the bond would be for the ladder truck and 2 engines.
Correct.
Probably, I'd do the ladder truck and
A
one
Quint.
would be mine. A Quint
Oh.
and 1 engine would be my recommendation.
Okay, all right. I didn't use up
Thank
too
you,
much
sir.
time.
No, thank you very much, Councilman. All right, let's move on
Can I
now.
just ask one question?
No,
And I'll be
we're out
really
of time.
quick.
All right.
Where do we go from here?
I present, thank you.
Councilman?
I'm with everybody. I think I would lean towards the refurbish, repair, and send it out there. If you want to present us with a, I would recommend, for me, seeing what it would be, at a council meeting, a package of sending it out to get it refurbished, repaired.
Mr. Administrator.
So to
So at the
summarize this
council-
up, we will bring the refurbished option to council when we're ready to do so.
Alrighty. Probably next meeting, just because of time
Yeah, probably.
sensitive. All right, is that, we're good, Chief?
Absolutely.
All right,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much. All right, administration, old-fashioned 4th of July festivities.
I'm gonna ask Hank to come forward and keep me company here. And hopefully Lisa's coming forward with my, thank you, Lisa. And I've got my slides available. You're gonna grab that quicker for me? How do I do these things? Okay. All right, just this item is to get your input on the old-fashioned 4th of July location. There's been a lot of talk and options being pushed around. And then there's been a lot of talk about what we do for our new Windjammer grand opening activities. These items are really kind of interrelated to each other. Guess the question here is, how do we accomplish getting the July 4th celebration into Windjammer Park? And then what should the grand opening look like? And that's really dependent upon where the location of the 4th of July, because we made a decision some time ago to try to work those 2 items together. First of all, I'll start with the Chamber of Commerce. And in talking with the Chamber here and kicking around ideas of the options here, option A is the new Windjammer Park Carnival placed on sodded area, southwest portion. We'll show you a map here shortly forward. And if that's not available, then the option that the Chamber is going to do is to look at doing it the same way they did it last year. There was a lot of other options kicked around. There was the Friend property, and so if you're in the communication on that, there's other options. There was the parking lot. According to the Chamber, these are really the only 2 feasible options, so that narrows it way down. The discussion here. Here's a nice aerial view of how it looks like in going into the park. I think Hank did an ingenious idea of trying to cluster it into one area here with sodding rather than doing the whole area. The regular grass that was in the contract just is not going to accommodate that quickly in happening. And then the other option is doing what you did last year. Then you see a big separation from our grand opening that we have scheduled tentatively for July 3rd, if we were to do that. And moving forward here, the option, if we do it in the park, the new Windjammer Park, I have to emphasize because it's a lot different than the old one. So, is the sod marked on the map? I'll show you the map again here. Coming forward, we're estimating that's up to 29,000. Sod would be laid in mid-March. And then we would try to squeeze that out of the parks budget, keep it under the 29,000. If it comes over it, then we'd have to bring it forward to council. And then the food trucks and the other vendors, we would try to put in old turf in other areas to accommodate that. And here's kind of a map. The vendors going out on the trail there in some of the old areas, closing off the parking lot, using that's the West Kitchen, right? Yeah, that would be in. And there's a nice sidewalk there that kind of partitions us out. So we're kind of using that existing sidewalk, or the new sidewalk going in is kind of how we end up with this triangle here that fits the whole thing. And talking to the chamber, this would work. And then kind of looking at some of the positives here, I think it's really important to host the 4th of July celebration at the Windjammer. It just highlights the park all at the same time and really consolidates the grand opening ceremonies. If we do this new sod here and making this fit in here, then they'll benefit from that. And then also this would be available to other upcoming events on a quicker basis by putting in that sod rather than going what was originally planned and having it seeded, which takes a little longer. And then other small time events, we'll push them all into that area where we have that sod to begin with. The negative is just purely the expense. The $29,000, we would have to pull it out of that section out of the Hoffman contract to accommodate this event that quickly. The warranty for the grass wouldn't be included, but the irrigation, we looked at that and that would still be in there. I've already directed, if we go this way, to ask Brett Arvidsson to see what he can get from the reduction of the Hoffman's contract to offset some of that 29,000 we're estimating for the sod. So not a lot of leverage, but it is benefiting them and it's reducing their cost because it was in the original proposal to do that seeding and do that maintenance on that area there. Then the other area, I'm assuming we move forward with the grand opening at the park, but certainly you have the option of giving input otherwise. Is kind of breaking this up into two events, a soft opening with the Splash Park soft opening, and that'll be a little bit available a little earlier than the rest of the park. We would do the Splash Park opening. The tentative is looking at June 22nd on a Saturday. This would kind of be a family event, and we wouldn't make this a marketed, or we wouldn't make this all the speeches and all those kind of things wouldn't go on that. We would center it in the next event. So here's a nice slide of the park and of the Splash Park. It'll really be a major highlight. And then the other proposal, kind of breaking it up, what was originally proposal when we did the, this is where I kind of had a hard time getting a head around, but I think in the chamber, they looked at it as a lot bigger event. Doing fireworks, doing a lot more expenditures on it. We just had the money for marketing for it. We didn't have the money we never talked about a budget for doing a lot of extra events. I'm envisioning more of the current plan, which is a little bit of a downscale. It still co-ops it with the 4th of July celebration. And puts it together. If we do the smaller event, then the chamber would likely lessen some of their marketing, and we would save about $25,000, reduce it down in their budget because we're not doing the grand scale. If you want a grand scale, that's certainly an option, but that's not what I'm recommending and proposing. Here's kind of how it would play out. We would have the grand opening on the 2 p.m. on July 3rd. Reception of dignitaries at our interpretive center will still be developing. The mayor would do the opening for the 4th of July. Event would start that evening. And then during the event on July 3rd and 4th, we would have a booth. And the chamber on their own, they're going to host a media reception event because there's going to get a lot of big media with this new Windjammer Park. And then the council's role, this is where I want to bring you in, make sure you're okay with it. We would ask for people to man this reception booth that we would have on both days, and look at some giveaways and some other areas to kind of promote and thank people for and celebrate the 4th of July opening. And this is the ribbon cutting would be on 2 p.m. Dignitaries will similar to what we did with the clean water facility. We do it a little earlier, and then the 4th of July celebration would start a little later, probably about 4 to 5, when that event would start. And then the city booth, a little bit more detail on what that would look like. The Chamber assured us they'd give us a prime location. Council members will be asked to take shifts, and then we'll provide some goodies. You can give me some input whether you want to go smaller or bigger. There was talk about food. We have to work through the liability issue, but certainly we can look at other vendors to take that liability of the food. And then thank you for support, and then this is a good area to kind of kick off support for phase 2. So when we get this thing open, we're going to have I think the ponds is going to stick out as something that's non-developed. And so we're talking about amphitheater and a lot of things in phase 2, and certainly we could start the impetus on the next phase. And with that, he's going to bring up, I'm going to pass this out. Lisa did a good job of giving me, doing a kind of overview of everything. Can you pass us to-
Thank you.
Give enough? All right. Lisa did a good job of just kind of laying it all out here of how it looks, just to reiterate it. So we would have we would call it the City Oak Harbor Kids Day, which is celebrate the splash park on June 26th. This is the closest day to school closing, so it works really well. The whole park probably won't be open then, but we'll make sure we have that area open, would be the plan. And this is basically serving as a soft opening, gives positive input. And I was reminded from staff here that this was a major component. People really wanted to see the splash park, and so we're celebrating that opening here. This would be kind of a limited opening, so we wouldn't really be doing, we certainly encourage your participation, but we wouldn't be doing the ceremonies or any kind of thing like that. We might do a simple little opening, but it wouldn't be the big dignitaries and all those kind of things. Wouldn't be a formal opening, I guess. And then the formal opening would be on the 3rd, during the old-fashioned 4th of July celebration. This is where we would do that part, and we would just accompany it and kind of dovetail it into the 4th of July celebration here. Any questions, comments, input from taking away or adding to?
Councilman Omberg.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Question on the sod schedule. You said mid-March. You think that gives you enough time to actually get activity on it? You have to have 2 cuttings on that sod before you really should have any activity on it.
We can, the sod company can cut as long as it's not too wet and get it out there. So mid-March, we can get it out there.
And it is driven by the sod company saying mid-March is the early that they can.
I think it's more driven with the construction schedule. Just being ready out in the field for the sod to be laid. We can pretty much call the sod company. They cut year-round unless there's some weather issues.
Okay, Hank, I have some concerns about this sod not being mature enough to actually have heavy activity on it. And there are some times where we pay a premium on overtime to make sure that area is prepped. It's like when you have good weather, you do your excavation and stuff like that.
Yeah.
If you're anticipating rain coming up, you work overtime in the good weather to get that site ready.
Right.
Wouldn't we wouldn't we be better off putting our money up into the overtime and making sure that the sod has matured and we've had at least 2 cuttings, maybe 3, because if we get on too early, then we risk ruining this sod.
Well, I would say if we get it into mid-March, we'll get more than 2 cuttings. I mean, April, May, June, we got 3 months where it will be cutting.
You
I mean,
feel
you're
it's really
cutting.
stable at that time?
It comes, the grass will come in a 100-foot roll,
Yeah.
3.5 feet wide. It's rolled out.
Yeah.
The material there, I've looked out in that area, and Brett can comment on this too, but the base is good and solid out there.
See, that's the other part too, is the base has to be stable, and it takes,
And
you
I
can't just
feel that,
compact it.
correct,
Yeah.
correct. And I feel that that base can handle the sod. We'll roll it out, roll over top of it. Weather permitting, maybe we'll start getting some cuttings in already towards the end of March into April. Yes, there will be some damage. We already get that now. Previous years when the carnival would roll in, we would anticipate that. We would work closely with the carnival crew to limit the amount of jockeying around to get the equipment in place. And once they pull out, I anticipate there would be some damage, but the parks crew would go out and repair that damage.
Okay, the other question I have too, there was some chatter through the pipeline that we were considering or could consider leasing or renting the Friend site. Has that idea been?
It's gone. It
It's
won't
gone.
work.
It doesn't work.
That's
okay.
what I covered in my slides, so I want to make sure everybody knew. It's
Just-
either we make it work on this location with the
Or
sod.
we go to the old place.
Or the chamber is going to go to the other location.
Okay, and then the evening event, could you be more clear about what is the evening event?
Well, it'd be the afternoon event, but it would be at 2 o'clock. We would do the ceremony, have dignitaries there, do the ribbon cutting and those kind of things. Bring the dignitaries over into the Windjammer area, and then we'd also open up the booth at 4 o'clock.
So the evening event is not like a band or some big event?
They're going to have a band there
Okay.
on the evening, so they'll have something going. The mayor will go over and do the introduction and
Who will
start.
have that?
The mayor will go over and
No,
start
who will have the band?
the chamber.
Okay, all right.
Because they're going to do activities, they're going to start opening up on July 3rd in the afternoon after everybody gets off work. So at 4 or 5 o'clock around that time. She's also got a lot of media attention on it, the side thing with this, and so she's also going to foster the media presentation and host media in rooms at the hotels here, and actually close one of the restaurants and kind of she's doing that independent of us. The chamber is taking that on and really making this a media event and getting us a lot of publicity for this opening for this facility. So, I mean, if you wanted to, I guess you could go into we can add fireworks on the 3rd. We can go into adding more public events, try to get more bands in and more things in if you want. I think it works really together. We're kind of playing off a lot of things that are already happening. And she's doing a little bit more emphasis on July 3rd than I think she would probably normally do. Everything would be more on the 4th. So that's the kind of mileage we're getting with cooperating these things together, and the advantage we have of doing this all together. And it's really, the really bigness of this is dependent upon it being located in the park. So, and that's the real celebration here.
So the rest of the park then is gonna be seeded or plugged?
Drilled.
It'll be drilled, okay.
Which is a form of seeding.
Yeah, and so you feel it'll be stable for general public foot traffic by or before the 22nd of...
Yeah, we figured 2 months for it to be available. We'll be voted at least 5 or 6 times by that point.
They may not have the grass open until right before July 3rd.
Okay.
They may make a decision. We might do the splash park, but they may make a decision, let's try to let the rest of the grass mature as much as possible. And on July 3rd morning, boom, the fences come down, the whole park is open up. We're committed to making sure that happens. and then we let everybody go in there. So they'll do the phase with the asphalt and the side over there where the plaza is, and that'll be open, and that's more controllable because that's just more cement being poured, and that should be open. So that's kind of the reason why we looked at 2 soft opening and then the hard opening, the grand opening being on July 3rd. So it'll peel over. So likelihood, and we may do some soft opening if things are ahead of time. They may open up the park as a whole, but the whole showcase of the whole park will be on July 3rd.
Thank you.
Councilman Wassinger.
Yes. First, thank you, and thank you to the chamber for. To me, I see this. The chamber's done the 4th of July for as long as I've lived in Oak Harbor, and it's just been a great. To me, the best thing that our community does as far as the celebration goes, the parade, the fireworks, the park, everything every year. And so I thank the chamber for allowing us to sort of join in that celebration for what we've accomplished as a city and have our grand opening for the park at the same time. I appreciate it very much. I like all the plans. I like doing our sort of part on the 3rd and the ribbon cutting and all of that. And so first, my comments on the splash park. So school, the last day of school is June 20th. So I like that it's the 22nd because I think the kids and the families will love that. My daughter is in 3rd grade. When she was in kindergarten, I did a presentation as city council member to her class. And a big part of my presentation was at that point we had just finished the park design. We were right in the middle of all of that, and I took in the picture and I told these kindergartners that this is going to be a splash park. It's going to be amazing, and they got all excited. And I said, and we had no timelines at that point, but I said, unfortunately, you guys may be like in middle school before you get to go to the splash park. And they were like, well, here we are. Now they're in 3rd grade and they're still little and they get to go to the splash park. So I think it's amazing. I like that part for the kids, and I appreciate the earliness of the splash park. For the sod and the plugging or seeding, so if we weren't to sod it, to pay for the sod for that area, how long would it be until, so you're saying, how long would it be till it would be ready to be used for like car shows and, I mean, beyond the 4th of July, all the other fun things, the beachcombers and all the other events? Is it gonna be?
The grass?
Yeah, if we were not to sod it, if we were to just plug the whole thing, how long are you looking till other things would be able to use it?
I will use Fort Nugent as an example.
Okay.
We seeded it, we stayed off it for a whole year. I'm not saying we can't open up to some light traffic in seeded areas. Sod, it's there, it's instant, it's not weather dependent. We don't know what's gonna happen. It could be a super cold spell coming up. We don't know. If it's cold, the seed's not gonna germinate. We're gonna lose time. So I think the sod saves us in that respect. And I would point out one other thing too, and if it was pointed out on the map, there is a section of the park that still has the existing sod, and that is up around by the lagoon area. And if you looked at where we had showed proposed sod area, that ties in with the sod heading towards the east around the swimming lagoon. So that does give us a fairly good amount of area, of sodded area and some of the undisturbed area. And then with the fireworks coming out on the barge, that, you know how people love to come in, pitch tents and set up for the day, and they would still be able to cross over and utilize that area there to set up for the fireworks. We weren't able to use that before because of the safety zone. So we've opened up a lot of space there for people to set up to watch fireworks.
Yeah, with the barge, pushing it out into the water, the safety zone really opens up the whole park. So this will be a unique experience, and with the $15,000 grant that they were able to receive from what's it called? LTAC, thank you, LTAC funding, and that goes a long ways in opening up the whole park area there. One thing we've learned in staff here is looking at stabilization at areas and to really, sometimes we have wet, soggy areas, and so I think what we'll be talking about in phase 2 is an area where we actually put down a base and then put the grass on top of it. And there we may even on a soggy area like with Holland Happenings, we'll be able to accommodate. This area will not, in the springtime when it's really wet, we just don't have an area. And in this phase 1, in phase 2, I think we would really like to look at doing some extra stabilization, and there's quite a lot of cost involved to that, where you stabilize the ground, and Kathy had a little, there's grids, there's different ways of doing it. Grass creeks, there's different ways of doing it, and that's where if it's raining, you're not tearing up the grass, and everything, and the heavy equipment's not falling into the ground. So that's something we're going to look about in phase 2 and bring back to you. So we have a long-term solution of really offering kind of heavy-duty events on the grass.
Councilman Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Well, first I'm going to start with the good. Chamber of Commerce, we truly appreciate you putting on this event. I realize that your job is to support your members and support the local businesses. Let's face it, this event certainly brings in tourists from out of town, but this is the premier event for our locals also. And just like Eric, I can remember ever since I was yay high going to the old-fashioned 4th of July. And I also commend you for working through this. I know how hard it is to be sitting here 6 months before an event and not even know where you're going to hold it. So I appreciate those efforts. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate city staff stepping up and trying to come up with solutions for this. I will tell you that I'm a little miffed that, the fact that we made that commitment of this park being open the 4th of July, and we made it fairly quickly and very vocally, and then we find ourselves now here, having to scramble and saying that the reality is there, without this sod, there's really no chance of that occurring. But with that said, I'm certainly going to leave the questions as to the sod and its ability to grow and handle this event to the experts. Hank, you've been here for the city for a long time. We obviously put a lot of faith in you, and obviously you're going to do the research, and I have that faith. So I really have no questions involving the sod, the use of the sod, or the fact that we've all worked together to try and come up with a solution to a problem. Understanding that, I want to put out there that the chamber did a pretty honorable thing in coming back and giving money back to the city that it had originally been paid to market this grand opening, and is instead taking on a lot of this responsibility themselves and intertwining it with an event that was already going to attract people. Kudos, right? It's money you could have just taken and ran away with, but you looked at this and you said, hey, these are things we're going to be doing anyhow, and these are some things that you're willing to take on internally. I appreciate that. So that's all the good stuff. And one more good thing. I love the idea of the soft opening of the splash park. Getting that open as quickly as possible for our kids to be able to enjoy that right after school's out is huge, right? But I will say that I am concerned about us spending any money on a soft opening there. Just from the standpoint of, one, I think it takes away from the grand opening. A grand opening is a grand opening, right? I've ran several businesses in town. We have soft openings all the time. The soft opening, of course, is our way of getting open. People can come on in, they can shop, they can do their stuff, but we save the big stuff for the grand opening, and thus it makes it more grand. So I am concerned about the fact that we're taking that money that the chamber has so graciously given us back, and we're maybe earmarking it to do something, just to do something with it. Certainly the splash park can open on June 22nd, and we can have somewhat of fanfare for it. I'm sure the kids will be plenty happy to see it happen, but I don't know that we need to spend tens of thousands of dollars on that soft opening. The reality is that there's almost enough money that the chamber's given us back to cover the sod issue. And I appreciate Hank reaching into your pocket and your budget. We can keep you guys tight on budget, and I know every penny counts. And I know you had even asked, possibly for some more assistance this year, and instead, you're digging deeper and then coming up with these solutions. So I guess that's my only concern with this. I have faith in staff that they're going to do the right thing by the citizens and by the chamber, who does some fantastic things in our town. This is an event that can be that much more spectacular in our brand new park, and incorporated into this event. I just, like I say, the splash park, I just don't get that. I don't get the soft opening there and the expense there when 2 weeks later we're going to have a fantastic party in our beautiful new park. So certainly welcome your comments. That's it.
Mr. Savadius.
Thank you. Also, thank you to the chamber. I'm vice president of the chamber, so I try and stay tuned into what they're doing. Once in a while, I know what's going on. And also to Hank. I had a conversation with Hank when I started hearing some of these numbers and my concerns, and I've got a much better handle on it. I don't know if I'm totally at ease, so I want to go through what my concerns were, just so that's public and my peers know. And also one more plug for the chamber. I try and do this every chance I get. The chamber puts this on. This year the city is contributing some lodging tax funds towards this barge, but thank you to the private businesses and the chamber and everybody that puts on the 4th of July fireworks. The city helps, but it's a chamber event. Mr. O'Born, you started off with your options. You said option C is not an option, which is the Friend property. Why do you say that?
I'm deferring to the chamber on that. And the executive director. I guess the issue I have is I don't control those. All I can control is getting the Windjammer Park. I don't have any control over the other items, so you put me in a little bit of a loss in trying to figure that out. One of the things I made clear, and I talked to Christine on, when I did that slide that I showed on, is I said, Christine, are we ruling out other options? And she said yes. So in reiterating what she told me, it's either here, what we're talking about, or it's doing it like you did last year.
Go ahead, Christine, you should probably come on up.
I just wanted to share that when that was presented as an option, we asked Corey Johnson. I met him out there at the field. He said you're going to have 40 different drivers that have never driven on that field before. It's sand, there's a high water level. You're going to have a problem. And then who fixes it when that problem exists? We don't have the funding to go fix that field when we can predict that you're talking food vendors driving in that area that have never driven on a field. So Corey highly recommended no. That's what I told the board. I told Blaine, these are our two options. We're completely fine with doing 4th of July next year in the park that's finished and ready for the traffic of 20,000 people. If you're worried about recovery or you're worried about something else, we'll flip it and do it the other way this year and do it really well next year. We added the 3rd this year because we thought the city was doing a grand opening. That's why we wanted to help be part of the marketing for both events. So when that's why we gave the money back, is that it's not a big grand opening. It's riding on the shirt tails of what we are already doing. So that would not be highest and best use of taxpayer dollars.
Okay, thank you.
So Christine, while you're kind of talking, if you were to do a grand opening, trying to give options to the council, what would you envision that the city would add?
Can I continue?
Assuming it's in the park.
Yeah, I'll come back to
Well, I would do whatever any other city would do for grand opening of a park. I don't know, if you would have balloons and you would invite the people and you would have hot dogs and cake and freebies and, I don't know what all you would do. You would have a bouncy house, you would have something for kids, you would have a big deal at the splash park. I don't know what you would do, but I think I thought when I got that contract, I thought that it was going to be the 3rd big party that led into the night that started to launch the 4th of July. That's what I thought it was going to be when we got that contract. But it's not, there's no reason to spend extra money to promote 4th of July, we're already doing that. So that's why.
And you're already doing things on the 3rd that you normally wouldn't do, so
Correct.
we're piggybacking off and.
Right, but we would not be doing those things if we didn't think there was going to be a grand opening a grand opening party. We would not have planned all that, but we are.
Okay, Mr. Servadius, you want to finish your questions, please?
So, and once again, I appreciate the efforts that were made between the chamber, Hank, Parks. So this came to my attention 2 weeks ago. It was a Wednesday, 2 weeks ago. And the first number I heard on the SOD was 24,000. The next day at the Clean Water Facility 2-week meeting, it was 25,000, and today it was 29. My thoughts are, or my immediate thoughts were, are we spending that money plus marketing money for a 2-day event? You know, the 3rd and the 4th, and is that the best use of those funds? 33,000 for the chamber, and there was a statement earlier made, and I didn't know that you guys had come to an agreement as far as giving some of that money back. Those chamber dollars are basically pass-through marketing dollars. The chamber doesn't make money on that. I want the public to know that. They were putting together a marketing campaign to market the park. While I don't recall if I voted for that, I probably abstained because I'm on the chamber board. It's still, I have to go back and always analyze my decisions, and I know we've put a lot of possible pressure on staff to get this park open, but at the same time, it's okay to take a step back and say, you know what, we might need to change course here. So when I added up the 24, 25, now 29,000 plus the 33,000, I thought to myself, this is a lot of money for what exactly? I have all the same concerns I think my peers shared as far as the sod being available. I'm sorry, the sod being torn up and then maybe needing to be repaired. That always, there's some ruts that occur, but this is very new soil, very new sod, even if it's rolled out in, I was hoping they're like 12-foot wide pieces, not just 3.5. But so it's a more commercial application. So as I always do, I start talking to people, and I reached out to both Carl Friend and Scott Thompson, had a conversation with both of them. Their initial look at it was, the very first thing they want to do is just have a basic soil sonar or something test done. Long story short, the total of the test plus improving the driveway, they would coordinate drivers in there if it did work, so there's a very defined route on that property. Tim, will you pull the map back up, please? That whole cost, their estimate was $10,500 to utilize the Friend property and then reseed it. I don't know how often Carl Friend redoes that, but this is the year it sounds like that he redoes the grass there. Every so many years he replants it, and this is the year that would happen. So prepping the ground, doing the study, plus reseeding it, they estimated was about $10,500. So as soon as I had that, I thought, do we spend $25,000 on sod? The marketing money we were possibly spending anyway because we want it to be a big event. But my brain wondered, as much marketing efforts as the chamber will be doing anyways, are there still going to be, I mean, the park's going to be full, period. It's a brand new park. People are going to find their way there. What else could we do if we moved it across the street, if that was a suitable setting? I'm calling it Site C. What else could we do with that? Well, if we didn't sod it, so 29 minus 10.5 is, help me out, somebody?
8.5.
Thank you. And I do math with a calculator. Mr. Wiesner's good, he said, $18,000, we could throw a heck of a party. I think coming down to what we do for a kickoff, to me, the public is saying thank you for your patience, and it's more than swag bags. It's, everybody loves free food, right? So it's sodas, hot dogs, and chips. And I don't know what liability exposure, there's probably something. I think hot dogs, the concern is listeria, my wife tells me. But we could hire someone that could do commercially, 7-Eleven, not kidding, hand out 10,000 hot dogs or whatever it is, and just to say thank you. So I want to gear up more that way, but I guess I'll end with, those were very brief conversations I had with the owners of that Site C. It wasn't a no-go. It is possible, but there's some things we'd want to see done as far as ground prep and some basic testing. Like I said, I had a very long talk with Hank, and he put me more at ease if we do the sod, it serves a slightly bigger picture long-term with the car shows and other events. But I'm still very concerned about that much traffic on brand-new sod and underlayment and what that does. And there was another comment made that the food vendors would go north of the lagoon. I don't know exactly where. I know that area right now is, I've nicknamed it Lake Windjammer, because it's incredibly, I mean, it's a pond up there right now, north of the lagoon. So I don't know how much that will change by July 4th. Christine?
I would just tell you that we would not put, I don't know who came up with that, but we would not put the vendors along the line where people are going to be watching fireworks. We wouldn't put that block right there, because people are out in the driftwood, they're jam-packed in there. We wouldn't put them there. We were thinking of another plan that would not affect the grass. So we can have another logistics and work out the city with that. But remember that wherever you put the carnival, food vendors want to be next to the carnival. Your arts and crafts vendors want to be next to food vendors. And all the vendors are by invitation only. So now we put them over in a field. We're now putting the entire event over in the field. So you want the chamber to maintenance a brand new park with 20,000 people and the whole rest of the party that's going on over on a field across the street. So we're spreading out the footprint in an unattractive area that we're marketing the heck out of, saying, welcome back, the park is open, but here's where you get to throw the party.
Will you come up to the table, please? Because I don't know if Tim's grabbing you on the mic.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So I don't know the answer to that. What I do know, like I said, is I brought these concerns up 2 weeks ago. I don't know if discussions on these points have occurred between the city and the chamber.
Why up to it?
But I wanted to make sure they were occurring, because I'm looking at it, and maybe I'm a little too objective just from dollars and cents, but that's a lot of money. And we still need to throw some kind of party for the public in there as well. Not just the money that was going towards the marketing of the grand opening, but then whether they're swag bags or free food, we need to, I feel, do something to open this park and say thank you to the public. So once again, I looked at it from a lighter logistic side, more of an intensive financial side was the way I was looking at it. And I don't think that door is entirely closed, although I think we need to make a decision because you're trying to plan.
Not
And
only
it's-
that, we raise about $25,000 to throw that event. Sponsorship. Sponsors are asking, where is this event going to be? And I'm billing them right now, asking them for their money. So I think it's really important to make a decision.
So logistically I know it's 6 acres, but I don't think there's all of that really available in Site C. Do you think you could get rides and vendors in that location? Would it fit?
The 85,000 square feet? Yeah, we actually did a footprint and put it over that location
I mean, I guess
of
it
what we
seems-
took up in the past and then set it down.
I don't know how big the footprint is we use over, I call it the new Pueblo property, whatever that used to be.
Well,
Yeah. We're
Holland
giving her
Happening,
that-
Holland Happening is a smaller carnival than 4th of July, and each year on 4th of July, since the park's been under construction, they've taken up a smaller and smaller footprint. So they can work with that space.
That's all I have at the moment. Thank you.
Councilman Wassinger?
Yes, I think it's that, the Friend property, correct me if I'm wrong, but would that require a little bit extra work too, in the sense of liability insurance? It's not,
Of course.
so I think there's some extra costs to
We have
not
the same
doing it.
liability insurance wherever we have it though. So we'll
Okay.
carry it, but the prep work and what happens to the recovery of that when
It's a little different than.
when somebody goes into a soft area, or if or whatever the issue would be, who's responsible for fixing it? It's back on private property. We would be. The city would not be. The chamber would be responsible.
To me, I see this as, this is just me speaking, that this event, like 4th of July is such a huge event, as I said before, on its own, that the chamber has done solely on its own with the support of businesses and grants and some kickback from the city at times too for different events. But I would like to see it done in the park. That would be my preference. And I think it's going to be a great event no matter what. You know, I really do. I really can envision it being like it 4th of July always is for our city. It's going to be a great event, and I think if Hank thinks that the sod in that area can handle it, you know, I'm going to trust that. I'm okay with spending the $29,000 on sod because it's not just for this event, it's for the other events that come down the line in August. We all know how much how much people have missed that park this last summer, and how much we heard that people were missing their events and having to rearrange. And if that sod can be there and be of greater use for other events too, I'm certainly for doing that. And I'd be curious to see if we could get some sort of discount from Hoffman for not having to plug that whole 85, 100 square feet. So that would be an interesting thing too. As far as the party, I'm not worried. I'm not as maybe concerned about the little details, about, what we hand out, what kind of food we have, if we do food, if we don't do food. I mean, I know a lot of that stuff is nice, but to me, the bigger picture is that we get the park open, get people to see it, thank them, because they put in a lot of not only their taxpayer money, but their time and their patience of having our giant park closed. So I think whatever we can do, more so to me, to make people feel welcome and get them there and have it in the park and have I think it's going to be great. No matter the little details, I think it's going to be a great event, and that's how I feel. So,
Councilman Almberg.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I haven't heard any discussion about the noise within the vicinity. We're compressing this carnival right next to a neighborhood, and I know there's a lot of light coming off of that until about 11 o'clock at night. There's generators all over the place. There's power plants. There's diesel engines running. There's music going with this thing. Any concern about having this carnival, whether it's on the Friend property or on the park in that corner, compress that close to that neighborhood?
Well, I think that would come into the layout and the planning, and I would assume the power plants can be moved as they always have in the past. You'd want to situate them strategically as far away from some of the residents as possible. I don't think there is any perfect scenarios. I think we're working with what we've got. I would make one comment, a little off the subject. This is just me talking. If we don't want to do the sodding, I would be hesitant to open the park at all to any events this summer. I would not want to talk to the car show. I wouldn't want to talk to other large events. There's no guarantees that the grass is going to be germinated and ready to go. There is no
my
guarantees.
question, Hank, is not
Sorry.
about the sod.
Yeah.
I'll go
I'm
with
sorry.
the sod
Yeah.
decision on that.
Yeah.
My question is about the intrusion with the noise and the light
Yeah.
immediately into that neighborhood when it's so close, as opposed to being in a farther distance in the park.
I know from a preference point of view, in long term, when I'm talking about stabilization area, probably we're going to designate an area more centralized in phase 2, would address that issue and keep it in the middle. I think you've always run into that kind of mix there just the way it is. So if we push two more on the other side, we're going to run into the apartments. So it's always a challenge, and certainly we want to be cognizant and do our best to minimize it like he's talking about doing here. But I think long term, we're going to look at other solutions there. I mean, we're gonna ultimately end up with a pavilion that's coming in phase one and possibly an amphitheater, which is more centralized in the middle there. So it's gonna be a busy event in the city. I mean, it's just the way it is and the way we designed it to be. So there's gonna be unfortunately some inconvenience to some of the residents that live nearby there.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. I thought the car show was supposed to be on the plaza in front of the plant, that it wasn't going to be on the grass. That there is a plaza in front of the plant,
Yes.
and we could have events there. We could have the farmer's market. That would be an excellent place to have the car show. And I hear about the car show being over on the side. So I'm a little confused. I thought we were building something into the park for something like that. Am I mistaken?
We are having a first meeting with the car show folks in March, and we have no clue where that's headed. And yes, I definitely would prefer having them on hard surface.
Well, I
If
think
that
I would
all
tell them
possible.
because of the new sod, no, you can't this year. It's either plaza or have it downtown, Main Street, you know, kind of like they do there's an evening event in Vegas where all the cars are parked and they have vendors around and something like that. We are all excited and we are pushing to have this be what we said it was going to be 8 months ago, and maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should pull back. I have visions, I believe it was, I don't know, was Holland happening or last year, 4th of July? It rained buckets. And when some of the vendors for the rides got stuck over there on Bayshore. And I'm sorry, I don't want that on our new sod. It's too valuable, it's too expensive. You can have people sit there to watch the fireworks. You can, I mean, but I'm sorry, that's a nightmare, and I don't want to have to spend $30,000 again. I know you know your stuff, but I'm sorry. That vision of a couple of those rides getting stuck in the mud over there Bayshore, and we know how much that's used, and it's compact, and it's in there, but when it rains buckets, I don't care where you put it, you're going to have problems. And I go with the sod, but let's limit it to blankets and things like that. I think we're missing the mark by not doing something more special with the splash park. I'm sorry, you talk to anybody in town, what's the first thing they're gonna say? Not the park, splash park. The kids are gonna be so excited, it's a big weekend, people go on vacation. They're going to come for 4th of July, but you've got to get them something to hang on to. And if we're not gonna have what we want in the park this year for 4th of July with everything in one place, you need to do something else. It doesn't have to be $10,000 worth, but you can still plan some fun things for adults and the kids because they're all chomping at the bit to come. You can have roped off the other area and maybe have a banner saying future home of pavilion, future home of, so they can get a visual of what it is. And then 4th of July, the stable grassy areas that people can sit on, you can do it. But we're trying, I feel this pressure, we're trying to make it work. And like you say, Hank, if you had your best thing, no one in the park for another year, but we can compromise it by not having the food vendors, the heavy traffic, I just have visions of that whirly whirl going around and getting kiltered, and that's my personal, I just can't see us spending it, putting the love into it, and then having it worse than we think of a few repairs. You seem to be, I don't know if your toes are crossed in your boots or not. When you're talking, if your toes are crossed and say, gee, I hope I'm right on this one. But I just, and I think on the car show, my envision was to have it down in front of the plant. And then maybe have a second food market or something. You can have your art show. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities. On the 3rd, if you had some bands, and I bet even high school, some of the, backyard bison or some of them, to play in the pavilion. That's exciting, and that's publicizing the big show the next night. You could still do an opening that night with the pavilion, but not have all the heavy equipment and stuff there. I mean, there are other things that I think we can work out and still have the opening on the 3rd, have the chamber start their build up for the 4th, but I just think, I don't know.
So where do
Maybe
you-
I'm tending off, but I'm thinking no rides in the park. I'm sorry. I hate to put a wet thing, but we're risking everything we've put into it. I can remember watching trucks come in for military appreciation, just driving across, and I'm thinking, hey, he's going to charge me for every water irrigation pipe I have just broken because some yo-yo didn't listen to me, and I finally jumped in front of it and wouldn't let him move, and they got out and yelled at me, and I said, I don't care. I don't know where the sprinklers are. Back this up, buddy. So I'm just, we've got those. I mean, there's just so much and it's so new. Unless I am wrong, I think we need to take a step back. We can still do it, but I think we need to put a little money and excitement into the splash park. Maybe you haven't seen the elementary kids, Mr. Wiesner, but
Oh, yes.
they are, I mean, they're just going to be so excited, and that really in some ways, other than the fireworks, is a bigger deal for the opening of the park because of the promises we've made. And I think we need to put a little more into that. I love the idea of using the pavilion for the ceremony, maybe getting more bands in for that evening. People can bring their blankets or their beach towels or whatever. But I think we just need to readjust and maybe go back to Bayshore for the vendors and the equipment. I just, I don't want the sod to be so wrecked that we now have that part of the park closed for the rest of the summer. That would be horrible. And you've got other parts. So somewhere there's common sense in here. We want this so bad, we're wishing it to happen. And the reality is we don't know if snow is going to come in March. We've seen it here. We don't know if torrential rain is going to come. But I've seen the damage where it's been someplace that we didn't necessarily care about and things. So I know you need an answer, and the chamber has been wonderful and not taking pay for the time they spend doing the marketing. They use the money for the marketing. So we have got a bonus deal, and their business is helping businesses. We're a business, but I just appreciate it. So
I do need an answer, and I am supportive of doing it in Bayshore, over on Bayshore this year. What we can't do is manage 20,000 people with bands on the 3rd and be setting up on the other side for beer garden. We can't have I can't run 2 events. We're not staffed, and even with 250 volunteers, we still would not be able to manage Windjammer Park and the footprint of where our event would be. So, do you see what I'm saying? So we would not be sponsoring the bands.
I'm not looking at the calendar. So when do the vendors set up?
On the 3rd was the plan.
Okay, they'll be ready to go on the 3rd. So they start moving it ahead of time.
Right.
Okay.
On the evening of the 3rd, the carnival is scheduled to open. And then we were going to have a beer garden and a DJ at that time. But that was with the park. Now, I would have to go back to my events coordinator and say, is it worth now to open on the 3rd if we're over on Bayshore? Because that event is generally a 1 day, and the day prior is a 16-hour day for staff. The day of is a 16-hour day. Is it necessary to open on the 3rd? The point of what we were doing was to attach it to the park. So we probably would not open on the 3rd, is what my initial reaction is we'll just run it like we did last year on the 4th.
If the plaza is open, we could have the opening there. People can use the splash park, and it is closer walking distance to Bayshore for their events. And I would think we could handle in the plaza what we need to for an opening. I know we've got to think about it, and not have the opening at the pavilion or where the sod is, still put the sod in, get the park ready, but have it more on the splash park side. I mean, the whole idea is kind of like having another stage with the plaza in front of the plant. So maybe I'm not remembering the drawings that they were, but
We have a motorcycle show also coming in, and that was going to be featured on the plaza, so it would be a good test. But I'm completely fine. I mean, we just really need an answer is what we need. And I have media coming, so we'd want to still invite them. The park's open. If the event's not there, I mean, it's still, if the park is open, I think you still have a great thing to sell to the community without putting all that heavy equipment on in the park. We just need an answer.
Councilman Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Just real quick, I do want to address the car show as the founder of the show and the guy who's been there for 39 years with the show. The show takes up approximately 3.5 acres of the park. I don't know that we can fit 350 cars into that plaza. In fact, I can guarantee you we cannot, not with the food vendors. The Lions Club, I can tell you the reason for the cancellation for this year's event is they are a small club. They work very hard each year at that show. That show is their major fundraiser. It's what allows them to do what they do in the community. And they felt as though the time and effort it would have taken to put in to reorganize the show for a one-off, then to pick it up, to move it back to the park and reorganize it in a new park the following year was beyond their capabilities. So I would tend to tell you that the Lions Club would probably say that if they cannot find a permanent location for the car show, that they would probably take a pass on it again moving forward, because I don't think it's within their capabilities. It certainly wasn't in their capabilities last year. I don't think things changed. So it's important to understand that. And I will tell you from a standpoint of the feedback we get from the car show participants, one of the reasons it has been one of the most steady car shows in the Pacific Northwest is the comments we get about its location in the middle of town and the fact it's on grass. The car show participants like that. Lots of places they do hold them. It's, you know, on a city street or in a parking lot at a high school or something like that, and we do get a lot of comments about that. With that said, that's my 2 cents on that. With that said, if let's say we were not to do this grand opening and hold this event on the 4th of July, you know, we promised the citizens a grand opening, and we promised it to them this summer. We were very clear. One of the reasons we shut it down partway into last summer was in order to have it open in time for this summer. Okay, so if in fact our intentions are to open this park, hold a grand opening, we've already determined that we were going to have to spend roughly $30,000 maybe on marketing the grand opening of this park as a standalone event. Now we're talking about holding a grand opening in conjunction with an event that most of the groundwork is laid for us. The media, we have a reason we're drawing people down. The heavy lifting is being done. So my question is, if we don't do it now, and if we don't do it coinciding with the 4th of July event, if we wait to do a grand opening, because I gotta tell you, doing a not so grand opening, it's not so grand. I mean, doing an opening when the entire facility is not up and running, something that we're not proud of, we're really setting ourselves up for failure. We're saying, hey, look, citizens, look at the mediocre park we brought you that's not quite ready yet, but we're going to do a grand opening anyhow. If we do decide to hold off, wait until the park is 100% ready for events and do a grand opening, what expense are we going to have then? It's going to be a standalone event. We're going to have to market it. We're going to have to build it from the bottom up. City staff has already indicated they do not have the time nor resources to do such an event. That's why we subbed it out to the chamber. So aren't we back at the same point we started with, that if we don't spend the money on the sod to do the event, the 4th of July down there, to coincide with the grand opening of the park, and then we wait and do a grand opening later on, are we back to spending $30,000 again to market that standalone event?
We could still have a grand opening, just don't put the rides in the park. People can go on it, they can play on it, they can take their soccer ball. You could still, you can still have the media But I'm just, are we gonna wreck all that grass just so we can say we had a big grand opening?
Can I respond?
Councilman Servadius.
Can I respond?
Go ahead.
I guess, again, I don't claim to be an expert in everything. That's why I rely upon the experts. That's why we rely upon our staff. I mean, we have some quality people working for us. We do have to put a little faith in the fact that they've done their research and they've tracked this down. And I'm going to go back to what I think I said at the beginning. I don't know that I have those concerns of the tearing up of the sod, because I am being told by staff that we place a lot of faith in, that have been with us a long time, that seems to have done the research, and that's where my faith is. So I don't know for me that we keep ending up back there, but I think we've been told by the people who've done the research that it's going to hold up, and so I'm taking that as verbatim, and so that's why I don't see that as an issue. And just reel back again to, okay, so let's say we do the grand opening while the 4th of July is going on, but as a separate event, who's going to arrange that? The chamber has already indicated that they cannot operate both functions at the same time. Staff has indicated that they can't operate the event, so now aren't we back out to hiring somebody out to market the grand opening event that's taking place down the street from the chamber 4th of July event? So again, it just kind of ends up a vicious circle when it comes to money. Some way or another, we're spending some money to create this grand opening event in our park, and it just seems to me like the 4th of July is the perfect time to do it.
Councilman Servadius.
Thank you. You know, when do you do a grand opening? The park is 2/5, 3/5 finished when we open on the 4th, right? There's a whole phase 2 and the ball fields eventually. So I don't know when the true final grand, maybe we do a grand reopening. A lot of businesses, I'm on the chamber board and we get these invites. It's grand opening. I'm like, wait, that business has been there for 4 years. So we could try that technique. Maybe it's a grand reopening. I'm not necessarily opposed to the sod if it accelerates the use of the park for the public. But I have significant, that is, if we did nothing, I think if we did nothing as far as marketing, this will be the busiest, weather dependent, this will be the busiest that park has ever been this summer, if we do nothing. It's a brand new, or a fair amount of the park is remodeled. We have a splash park, which is going to be a massive draw. The plaza will be a draw. The largest fireworks show the chamber has ever done. The city helping with the barge. It's going to be as busy down there as it's ever been. So, once again, when I heard the numbers, I always have to ask what if, and I'll ask this what if. Has anyone picked up the phone and talked to Carl Friend or Scott Thompson for option C? Okay. So no one's picked up the phone and talked to the property owners.
Well, I talked to Carl Friend. And I emailed Scott Thompson when I was investigating. Is that what you're asking?
Right.
And Carl Friend said, I trust Corey Johnson. So
Okay.
that was my decision was, I'm going to trust Carl Friend. It's his property, and he trusts what Corey's saying. So.
And I talked to him after that, and it wasn't the exact same conversation I had. And I'm not locked into Site C. My concern is if we do another site, to me seems like cheap insurance. I don't know if we pay anything really, except for, I know we have Public Works and Parks and staff involved with the new Pueblo site. I don't know if that much the city would need to spend there. I know the chamber, if repairs were needed, a roller or something, I think as the chamber, I shouldn't say we, I'm wearing hats, has the chamber traditionally paid for those repairs in the new Pueblo site?
The city took care of anything that went wrong with the ruts or anything in that property, but there was some damage done last year in which the chamber paid Corey Johnson to come in and fix.
Okay. So I can never match your passion, Beth, but I think we're on the same wavelength here. To me, if it was in Site C or if it was in Mi Pueblo, yes, it's incongruent. It would be nice to have all in one spot, but for me personally, it's cheaper insurance to have that be as usable as possible, as quickly, the whole park for the general public.
So with all due respect, I don't think that Plan C is part of what the chamber wants. I'm not asking for private property away from every business imaginable. I don't think the business community is going to want me to tuck it into a field when I have an option of doing it exactly like I did last year, which downtown appreciated a great deal. So I would not want to pull and set that over there in a field where you're not in the waterfront view of the sound. So everybody, you know what I'm saying? So those kids get on the Ferris wheel and they can see the fireworks, you know, people, so I don't like option C. I'm thinking you're trying to tell me where to put my event.
No, I got an email from you that was incredibly excited about option C, that you'd solved everything. And then I got an email that said, hey, Hank's willing to lay down sod. I appreciate all the efforts that have gone on. When I started hearing these conversations, my brain starts asking what if and doing more of a financial analysis as much as logistics. Having said all of that, I'll end with my concern is not as much on the sod. I applaud the efforts, the creativeness, Hank, to get that done. It's what I see as the potential damage to that site, as new as it's going to be. And now we're potentially putting tape around that whole area for the next several months of the summer saying, public, please don't do this, or don't walk on this. If we could pull it off on Bay Shore, maybe, New Pueblo lot, that's what I'll continue to call it. Beer garden on the plaza, I don't know, beer garden at Flintstone, I realize they're not congruous with spots. But then the whole park and sod included is available for the public to watch the fireworks. That's probably where I'm at. I'll end with that.
Hank, I'll come back to you. We can still open the park and have the chamber event do theirs all together how they want to, how they did it last year, have it all laid out, do a opening for the splash park, but the park, other than if you have to rope off some areas, the park will still be open. So why does the grand opening have to have all this stuff in it? Why can't it just be the town celebrating and people can come at their leisure down to the park and they can walk down there and watch the fireworks? We have the barge out so it has more room. They go up higher so you can watch it from lots of places, whether you're on top of the Ferris wheel or you're down by Carla's Park and Flintstone Freeway. Why does the grand opening have to have all the stuff in the park? The park will be opening and we can promote it that it's open and people can come and visit it. There just may be, if we have to, I don't know, rope off any area, but we can have foot traffic there. Why not be satisfied with that? We are opening the park. Why does the grand opening have to have all this stuff in it? We want people to use the park, and if I have to write a letter or pay for it to be in the paper, say I'm sorry, but we're not having rides and carnivals and stuff in the park, but the park is open. We promised you it'd be open. It's open this summer, and the splash park is open. Then I'm sorry, what am I missing something? And then the chamber can plan their event, have it what they want, and make the money that they need to, and it's in conjunction with people being able to use the park, but yet we have safeguarded what we have just installed. Councilman Wassinger.
What I'm hearing is that the biggest concern is damaging any sod or grass plugs, even if for foot traffic. That's what I'm hearing. Everybody's big concern is major damage to, if we were to put the carnival and a lot of traffic and vendors on newly laid sod, grass, whatever you want to call it, whatever it is. If it is to be damaged, if it is to rain buckets, which I'm sure it has in years past when we've had the carnival down there. I mean, I know it has had to have at some point.
Not up in my watch.
What? Okay, yes. I mean, not in the past several
The
years,
sun
but
always shines over
yeah.
Christine.
So what? I mean, I hear damage to our investment, damage to the ground. Can you or Brett tell us exactly what damage could be done? Worst case scenario, these trucks that have come every year to do the same carnival every year, whether it be on Bay Shore or when it was in Windjammer, it's the same carnival, I'm promising myself, right? What is the worst damage on this newly laid sod that's going over this ground that could happen And is it just not repairable in a timely fashion? And if it is the worst case damage, if it's the biggest ruts, rivers you've ever seen, how long would it take to get fixed to have it back open for the rest of the summer for people to walk on?
We, when we were going into the early phases of Windjammer, we had archaeologists out there. We were digging, potholing, running equipment all over the place, and we were rutting. Probably not maybe to the extreme of this, but so we've dealt with a lot of ruts. We take the street roller out, use that. It works pretty good on a lot of the rutting. We roll it out. If we have super deep ones, we would fill it with some topsoil and we would throw some sod on top of the rut. And so you would have some areas that might need to be take a week or two, but I think it would have to be absolutely extreme, pour down, crazy weather to where you'd have a big mosh posh that would be completely closed for the whole year.
So if that were to
But that's how
happen,
I
has
would
this
go
happened in the past where we have had such horrible conditions, knowing going into before the chamber, and this is maybe even before Christine's time, but where we have we ever had to cancel because of just a monsoon awful, where we've had to say to the chamber, we can't drive your trucks on our park?
No, we've had them pulled out of there before.
Yeah.
And we've had some deep ruts, but that's been a long time ago.
And because this is new, and I get that that's a concern. This is very new sod. This isn't like our old park where they've been there for 50 years or however long.
Yeah.
Is that concern you that the damage could be escalated because the ground is new? Is that a concern, or is it basically the same base? I'm not an expert. I'm not an engineer, so I
We see the dirt out there now as the base, and we drive on that dump truck right now, and we do that day in, day out. What happens is we come and put a topsoil on it. The smell that we've been getting is actually the topsoil in there, and we put the grass and we seed it. Now, that topsoil is pretty spongy when we start off with it, and over the first year, then it becomes it roots in and becomes a mass, and that we actually design the end of the parking lot so we can drive heavy vehicles off the end and onto the grass. It's just this first year till it gets itself solidified that we're worried about it. Now, in terms of worst case, I would say we had a rainstorm or tore it all up. Worst case is we come in and do another $29,000 worth of sod. Pull it up, put it down, and we just be back on it. But again,
would it be would it tear up every piece of sod?
No, I don't think so.
Like I said, $29,000 or would it be $10,000?
I'm talking the worst I could ever imagine.
Yeah.
I agree with Hank is we probably can fix it and roll it and get it back in place. And that's the nice thing about sod is we can roll it out. With the drill seeding and the topsoil, we don't have that luxury. So the sod, we have a lot more flexibility. If we had to buy some more sod and lay down a couple rolls.
So I guess my question is, why? I know it's new, but is there that much of a bigger risk this year versus the year 5 years from now when we do this in the park again? Is there a bigger financial time work on you guys' burden right now, this July, versus 2 years ago when we had it there in the park? Is there going to be more damage done to it this year versus go back 2 years?
The first year, as we've always said, the first year we have to keep heavy vehicles on. You'll be running more as people walking, you won't know the difference. It's those dual tires on those big, they're basically highway rigs, and those are the things that create this.
So the risk is to just the sod layer, or any ruts that we can fix.
The underground layer is hard. It's not going to move. Because like I say, we're on it right now, but yeah, we will make big ruts.
So basically, the risk we're taking is the cost of buying new sod for the sod that the carnival could rip up this year.
Where we've penetrated and broken through and left ruts. But any other time, every other year, the 4th of July, when they roll out of town, you walk out there and you can see exactly where they were because of all the foot traffic and everything else. It's worn down, and it takes a few weeks. Every year, it takes a few weeks to bounce back.
Just a few weeks.
Yeah.
Mr. O'Byrne,
Yeah, I was
this
talking.
isn't a you don't need a vote because we didn't.
No, I'm trying to get a
Action.
consensus, and I think
But-
Lisa has some
Okay.
comments.
I think
Ms. Felix.
Mr. Wiesner clarified a lot of them that I was going to speak to earlier, but logistically, the option C that you were bringing up, I think from a special events permitting standpoint with the city, that would also be more difficult because then we have a lot of foot traffic between Freund Marsh and Windjammer across an area that we would likely need to close that street, and then we're completely restricting access to Dillard's Addition neighborhood down there, which is what you had brought up about the concern about the noise and everything. So that, from a special event side, that would definitely be a not the best option, I would say. And then as well, sort of, I guess the consensus that I've been hearing is that if the chamber proceeds with option B and is off-site as in 2018, then that removes their role from any event in Windjammer. And so then what we as staff would need to determine is whether it's a non-fanfare event, like as you were suggesting, or whether we proceed and do a large event, which we don't currently do large events because we hire for the marathon. You know, we contract that out. But it's not to say that we couldn't if that was the direction we need to go, whether we have bands, whatever we have. And that we would plan our own separate event. It would be distance from the carnival. Obviously, the fireworks would still happen there that evening. That's part of the chamber's event. But otherwise, they wouldn't be. We would no longer be the feature. We would have our own event, and then what scale that would look like. That is what we would need left to determine. But I think what we have to figure out right now, for the chamber's sake, is their location.
I guess in closing, if the staff is solid and thinks that the repair won't be closing all the sod area and the park will be open, then, I mean, it's not a real vote, but head nod to go ahead and go with as it is planned. Councilman Omberg.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Concentrated loads, whether it's vehicle traffic or foot traffic, is going to have a higher impact on new sod and new soil. I think we all agree to that. If we have the carnival over on the Bayshore site, we're going to be spreading out a lot of the foot traffic. It's going to have less impact. We haven't talked about that scenario and still have the sod for the car shows or whatever for the summer. But this does spread the load in a sensitive area if we spread it out that way. I think there is a risk. I've lived in this community for 40-some years. I've actually worn my boots down to the carnival.
I have too.
Yeah,
Rain boots.
and we get in June, in that time before mid-September, we get a fair amount of rain, and that site will probably need the rain just to let the soil stabilize and for the grass to grow. Is it detrimental to our opening if we have the carnival in one site and then we have the fireworks and the other pedestrian activity on the grass? That seems to be fairly logical to me.
I guess from staff, I'm just trying to wrap this up.
I do have a question, if you wouldn't mind, for the chamber. I think it's
Okay.
Christine, can you tell us how the revenues were for the 4th of July carnival at the other location and what kind of attendance?
Sure, so the parade was historic. It was the largest with the most entries. The carnival revenue was down about $10,000 last year because of the park closed.
And can you give us an idea of what kind of percentage it is?
It generally brings in about $35,000.
So the carnival was down 30%, assumably in attendance, because attendance typically correlates to the revenue. So the carnival at the other location was down 30% from previous years, even though there was a record attendance at the parade.
Record entries of the parade and normal, right. So we planned accordingly. We plan to reach where we did the year past. So the other thing to remember too, and I know I take my job really seriously, as everyone knows, but In 2016, this carnival was USA Today's Reader's Choice top 10 in the country for a festival. So when we come back, I want it to come back with a vengeance. I want it to be ready. If it's only a third of the park is done, I kind of agree with where you're headed with this. We're not locked into anything, and I wanted so much. I mean, last year when you closed it, I found out in March it was being closed, and heard it will be open for next year. That's why we got so excited and planned everything accordingly.
And open, we assumed open for events.
I thought it meant it will return to the grand event that was awarded in 2016. So that the fact is that's not going to happen this year. That's not. I mean, I'm totally fine with flipping it, and then maybe next year as phase 2 comes in and you have stability for Carnival, or we readjust our fundraising to where we make a smaller carnival that fits appropriately in the park. But that was not what was planned this year. So I still have to do a big carnival, and we still need to make money off it. That 4th of July carnival is the largest fundraiser for the chamber of the entire year.
We are running short of time just because the police department has a ceremony at 4:30 that they would like us in attendance, and we're not going to have time to talk about the phones. I suggest maybe if our regular council meeting doesn't go over, we could have a discussion at the end of our council meeting. But I think it's important that we support our police department with their awards today at 4:30. So somehow we need to wrap this up, and I don't know where we're at on telling the chamber yay or nay. If the staff says we can repair it, but it can't, it looks like be the size that they want it to be of the rides, I don't know.
I would just end, I mean, as one of my mentors would say, there's plenty of time, but no time to waste. I think we could table this to our first, make a decision at our first meeting next month, right? We're only days away from that. And at that day, you have a known.
I can make a decision, right? I'm not one of you. I can make the decision for you. I mean, you keep kicking the can down the road, and I have people asking. I have vendors asking. I have.
It's a big event
They wanna know.
Big event to plan in 5 months.
We have 7 media coming. 5 have already committed in the last week talking about it. So I do think we need to make a decision. I know you can't vote on something here, but can we poll and see where everyone is that fair? You're not voting, but you are weighing one side
Head
or the
nods, Mr. Osborne. I think we can kind of head nod.
Go ahead, give me some direction there, that's what I'm looking for.
Carnival and Windjammer.
Bayshore.
Bayshore.
I have a question. The spot in so you're saying that, I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I heard you right in your last comment, that the size in Windjammer, because I'm really fine either way, it's your carnival. I mean, really, when it comes down to it, what I say is not the chambers, this is your event. But the space in Windjammer that we're talking about sodding is not the size that you need to bring your big carnival back?
No, it fits. It would fit.
So you would be able to do your carnival, that your dream carnival that you would like to get back to on the sod?
Yes. So the footprints are always different. So
Yeah.
if a wide ride, our footprint in the park got smaller, the rides went up instead of wide. So there's quite a variety that you can get to make that happen. It would still be spectacular. I would.
Well, again, I will say that this is the carnival and the vendors is your event, so I think that you need to do it where you feel comfortable. I am fine either way. I would like to see it all in Windjammer, but I will not be, we'll make work what we need to make work.
Mr. Nyden.
I think one part of this too is that we have contractors there that want an answer also. Are they going to put it on their seating schedule, or are we going to take it off and we're going to sod it? And we've approached them a couple weeks ago already on that, so they're waiting for an answer also.
It looks like sod. And 2 Bayshore, 1 either way, 1. I'll trust your judgment and I'll go Windjammer. So that's just part of the council. You're still missing two others.
Even if we sodded it, doesn't mean it
Right.
would have to be used for the carnival.
No, but she's signing contracts, so we have to kind of,
Well, I think if council is okay with us laying the sod, then it can be up to the chamber what location they go to, because that's their decision regardless. I think we need to know yay or nay on sod, and then if it's yay on sod, chamber can choose
I
park or
think everyone
Bayshore.
has head nodded that they want the sod because it gives more public use of the park sooner than not having it. So that's a definite.
Yeah, and we're gonna do the sod with the council, with the administrator
Right.
and that's why it's at 29,000, so it's within the mayor's approval, so we can make a decision right away.
So I'm with the sod thing.
Everybody's
I just want to
the
make
same.
it clear that I'm not with going down there with the carnival.
Carnival.
Because it concentrates heavy loads and a lot of foot traffic. And I don't think it jeopardizes our opening or what we're trying to do at that park on the 4th of July. I think we're going to look pretty ridiculous if we tear it up and then they pull out the carnival and then we're all down there trying to repair it. And it's going to be repaired. And there's no end to there's no end to the good you can do with other people's money.
And Mr. Oborn, if we can fit in a conversation about the phone, it was on our agenda at our next meeting after the meeting closes.
We can still add it.
All right, I encourage everybody to go to the ceremony, and workshop is over. Thank you very much for your attendance.